I thought I knew every secret in my house, until the day I found my late wife's hidden case inside the Christmas ornament box. What could she have hidden that would make me grab my granddaughter, leave the tree bare, and race away before her parents came home? The December wind rattled the windows of my living room as 8-year-old Lila bounced excitedly beside our bare Christmas tree. Her blonde curls caught the afternoon light, and her green eyes sparkled with pure holiday joy. "Grandpa Frank, can we put the angel on top first?" she asked, tugging at my sweater sleeve. "Not yet, sweetheart," I chuckled. "We need to put the lights on first, then the ornaments, and the angel goes on last. That's how Grandma Nora always did it." At 68, I'd developed a methodical approach to most things in life. 30 years as an electrical engineer had taught me the importance of following proper sequences. "I miss Grandma," Lila said softly, settling beside the ornament boxes I'd brought down from the attic. "I miss her too, honey, but she'd want us to make this tree beautiful, just like we always did when she was here." I knelt beside the largest box, labeled Nora's Special Ornaments, in her careful handwriting. As I lifted it, something felt different. The box seemed heavier than usual, and when I shook it gently, I heard an odd sound. Not the familiar clink of glass ornaments, but something more solid. I set it down and removed the lid. The familiar red and gold ornaments were there, but underneath them was something I'd never seen before. A small wooden music box with brass hinges. Lila's eyes widened. "Grandma had a music box in there?" I lifted the ornaments out carefully, my heart racing. I'd packed and unpacked these decorations for 3 years since Nora was gone, and I was certain this music box hadn't been there. "Let me wind it up." Lila reached for the small key. The melody that emerged wasn't Silent Night or Jingle Bells. Instead, it played The Way You Look Tonight, the song Nora and I had danced to at our wedding 42 years ago. I examined the music box more closely. The wood was darker on the bottom, and when I pressed gently, I felt something give way. A false bottom. My engineer's mind immediately recognized the craftsmanship. This had been deliberately designed to hide something. The bottom panel slid away, revealing 3 items: a sealed envelope with "For Franklin, if it matters," written in Nora's handwriting, an old brass safety deposit box key, and one of Nora's recipe cards with coded notes instead of cooking instructions. "Grandpa, what's that stuff?" My mouth went dry. Nora had hidden these items specifically for me to find, but why? She'd been sick for months before she passed, but her mind had been sharp until the very end. This was intentional. Before I could answer, my cell phone rang. The caller ID showed my son Mason's name. "Hey, Dad, how's the tree decorating going?" Mason's voice carried that familiar, impatient edge. "We're just getting started," I said, instinctively sliding the envelope into my coat pocket. "Good. Listen, Dana and I should be back in about an hour. We've got that dinner reservation at 7, so if you could have Lila ready." "Of course. Mason, did you know your mother had a music box in with the Christmas ornaments?" There was a pause. "A music box?" "No, what kind of music box?" Something in his tone made me cautious. "Just a small one. Plays an old song." "Huh. Well, Mom had a lot of little trinkets. Probably nothing important. Anyway, we'll see you in an hour." The call cut off abruptly. Mason had sounded nervous. But worried about what? "Grandpa, look what I drew." Lila held up a sketch showing stick figures around a Christmas tree. One figure held a small box, and there were angry faces in the background. "Tell me about your drawing." "That's you finding the secret box, and those are the angry people who don't want you to have it." A chill ran down my spine. "What angry people, Lila?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Just the ones in my head." My phone buzzed. A text from Dana. "Did you find anything unusual in Mom's things? Mason mentioned you found some old items." I hadn't told Mason about the envelope or the key. I'd only mentioned the music box. So how did Dana know about old items, plural? Another text. "Just wondering. Some of Mom's papers might need to be handled by the estate lawyer." Estate lawyer? Nora's estate had been settled 3 years ago. What papers could Dana be talking about? A memory surfaced. Nora in her hospital bed just weeks before she was gone, gripping my hand. "Frank, if anything ever seems wrong, if anyone ever tries to harm our family, remember that I've always protected what matters most." At the time, I'd thought it was the medication talking. Now, I wasn't so sure. "Lila, honey, how would you like to go visit Mrs. Rosa?" Rosa Jimenez had been our neighbor for 15 years. She'd helped care for Nora during her illness and had become like family. More importantly, she lived across town, away from Mason and Dana. "Really? Can we?" Lila's face lit up. "Yes, but we need to pack a few things first. Can you go to your room and put some clothes in your backpack? As Lila ran upstairs, I quickly gathered the music box, the key, and the recipe card, placing them in a small bag with the envelope. Every instinct was telling me to get away before Mason and Dana returned. I called Rosa. Frank, how are you, mijo? Rosa, I need a favor. Can Lila and I come stay with you tonight? It's complicated. Of course. Is everything okay? I'm not sure yet. We'll be there in 20 minutes. I looked at our bare Christmas tree, surrounded by unopened boxes. For the first time in 42 years, we wouldn't be finishing our Christmas decorating. But something told me that this year there were more important things. Lila came down with her backpack. I'm ready for our adventure, Grandpa. As we headed for the door, I heard a car pulling into the driveway. Dana's black BMW. They were back early. Grandpa, should we wait for Mom and Dad? I looked at Lila's trusting face, then at the envelope in my coat pocket. Whatever Nora had hidden, it was important enough that she'd created an elaborate plan to ensure I'd find it. No, sweetheart. Let's go out the back door. We slipped through the kitchen just as I heard Mason's key in the front lock. My heart pounded as we got into my old Ford pickup. As I started the engine, I saw Dana appear at the living room window, looking directly at us. She pulled out her phone immediately. I drove away quickly, watching in my rearview mirror as Dana stepped onto the front porch, still on her phone. Grandpa, are we in trouble? Lila asked quietly. Not yet, sweetheart. But we might be. As we drove toward Rosa's apartment, my phone started ringing. Mason's name appeared on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again. By the time we reached Rosa's building, I had 7 missed calls from Mason and 3 urgent text messages from Dana. Where are you going with Lila? Frank, please call us immediately. We need to talk about what you found. That last message confirmed my suspicions. They knew about Nora's hidden items. The question was, how did they know, and why did they care so much? I turned off my phone and helped Lila out of the truck. Come on, sweetheart. Let's go see what Mrs. Rosa has to say about all this. Rosa Jimenez opened her apartment door before we even knocked. Her weathered face creased with concern. At 55, she'd raised 4 children of her own and had an intuitive understanding of when something was seriously wrong. Mijo, you look like you've seen a ghost, she said, ushering us inside. The small apartment smelled of chamomile tea and cinnamon, comforting scents that reminded me of simpler times. Mrs. Rosa? Lila ran to her for a hug. We're having an adventure. An adventure, eh? Well, adventures require proper fuel. Let me make you some hot chocolate. As Rosa busied herself in the kitchen, I sat heavily on her worn sofa, finally allowing myself to process what had just happened. I pulled out the envelope, the key, and the recipe card, laying them on the coffee table. Rosa, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. She returned with a steaming mug for Lila and settled into her recliner. Always, Frank. You know that. During Nora's last few weeks, did she ever mention hiding anything? Did she ever ask you to keep anything safe? Rosa's expression shifted, becoming guarded. She glanced at Lila, who was happily sipping her hot chocolate and examining the music box I'd brought along. Lila, mija, why don't you go color at the kitchen table? I have some new crayons in the drawer. Once Lila was out of earshot, Rosa leaned forward. Frank, what did you find? I showed her the items. These were hidden in the Christmas ornament box. Nora set up some kind of elaborate system to make sure I'd find them, but only after she was gone. Rosa was quiet for a long moment, her dark eyes studying the envelope. Finally, she stood and walked to her kitchen counter, returning with a small tin that had once held tea. She asked me to keep this, she said, opening the tin. Inside was a spare key to my house and a USB drive. She said if you ever came to me with questions about something she'd hidden, I should give you this. My hands trembled as I took the USB drive. Did she tell you what was on it? No, but Frank, there were things happening in those last weeks, things that worried her. What kind of things? Rosa glanced toward the kitchen, making sure Lila was still occupied. Your son and his wife, they came to visit Nora several times when you weren't there. At first I thought it was sweet, family spending time together. But Nora started getting upset after their visits, really upset. One time I heard raised voices through the wall between our houses. Mason was yelling about something, and Nora was crying. A cold knot formed in my stomach. When was this? About 2 weeks before she passed. After that visit, Nora asked me to come over. She was shaking, Frank, scared. She made me promise to keep that tin safe and to only give it to you if you came looking for answers. I stared at the USB drive. Did she say what they were arguing about? She wouldn't tell me details, but she kept saying, "They can't do this to Lila. I won't let them." She was very worried about your granddaughter. From the kitchen came the sound of crayons on paper. I could see Lila drawing intently, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration the way children do when they're focused. "Rosa, I need to see what's on this drive, but I don't have a computer with me." "I have an old laptop. It's slow, but it works." She retrieved a dusty laptop from her bedroom and set it up on the coffee table. As it booted up, my phone, which I'd turned back on, started buzzing with notifications. 7 more missed calls from Mason, and now Dana was calling too. "They really want to talk to you," Rosa observed. "That's what worries me." I plugged in the USB drive. It held a single audio file, dated just 3 weeks before Nora was gone. I clicked play, and my wife's voice filled the room, fragile but resolute. "Frank, if you're hearing this, it means something has happened to me and you found what I hid. I'm making this recording because I need you to know the truth about what Mason and Dana tried to do." My heart stopped. Rosa gripped my hand. Nora's voice continued. "They came to me with papers, Frank, legal documents. They said that because of my illness, I wasn't competent to make decisions about Lila's future. They wanted me to sign something that would give them complete control over her inheritance and custody arrangements." "What?" I whispered. I refused, of course. "But Mason, Frank, he threatened me. He said if I didn't sign, they would find a way to prove you were unfit to be around Lila. They said they'd claim you were too old, that your memory was failing, that you might be dangerous." The recording crackled with static, then Nora's voice returned, stronger now. "I pretended to agree, but I never signed anything. Instead, I went to see Benji Torres. You remember him from the old neighborhood? He's a notary now. I had him witness some documents of my own." Benji Torres. I remembered him well. He'd worked with me at the engineering firm years ago before starting his own business. Solid, trustworthy, meticulous about details. "The safety deposit box key will lead you to those documents, Frank, and there's more. I've been recording my conversations with Mason and Dana. Rosa has been helping me, though she doesn't know everything." I looked at Rosa, who nodded grimly. "She asked me to turn on a recording app on her phone whenever they visited. I thought she was just documenting things for her doctor." "There's one more thing," Nora's voice said from the laptop speakers. "Check the church basement. Father Miguel keeps community records there, and I've left something important in the old filing cabinets. Benji will know where to look." The recording ended, leaving us in stunned silence. From the kitchen, Lila called out, "Grandpa, come see what I drew." I walked over to where she sat, my legs feeling unsteady. Her new drawing showed a family scene, but this one was different from the first. It depicted a hospital room with a bed, and around the bed were several figures. One was clearly meant to be Nora, lying down. Another was a man in a white coat, a doctor. But there were 2 other figures standing close to the bed, and their faces were angry. "Tell me about this picture, sweetheart." That's when Grandma was sick, and the mean people came to visit her. I was hiding behind the door because Daddy told me to stay in the hallway, but I could see them through the crack. A chill shot through me. "Lila, were you at the hospital when Daddy and Mommy visited Grandma?" "Uh-huh. They took me lots of times, but they always made me wait outside the room. But that one time, I peeked, and Daddy was being really loud, and Grandma was crying." I knelt down beside her chair. "Did you hear what they were talking about?" "Daddy kept saying something about papers, and Grandma kept saying no. Then Mommy said something about how I would be better off with them taking care of everything." Rosa and I exchanged looks. Lila had witnessed the confrontation Nora had described in her recording. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Ellison, this is Benji Torres. I got your message from earlier." I'd forgotten I'd texted him from the library. "Benji, thank God. I need to see you. It's about Nora." "I've been expecting this call for 3 years, Frank. Can you come to my office tonight? After hours would be better." "We'll be there." As I hung up, Rosa was looking at something on her own phone. "Frank, there's a car parked across the street. It's been there since you arrived." I peered through her front window. A dark sedan sat under a streetlight, and I could make out 2 figures inside. "They followed us," I said. "Who followed us?" Lila asked, joining us at the window. "Probably your parents, sweetheart. They're worried about you." But even as I said it, I knew it was more than worry. If Mason and Dana had been pressuring Nora to sign legal papers while she was at her weakest, if they'd warned they could have me labeled unfit to care for Lila, then this wasn't about concern for their daughter's welfare. This was about control. "Rosa, is there another way out of this building?" "Through the basement. It connects to the building next door." "Good. We need to get to Benji's office without being followed." As we gathered our things, Lila tugged at my sleeve. "Grandpa, are we still having an adventure?" I looked down at her innocent face, then at the drawings she'd made, drawings that might serve as evidence of what she'd witnessed. "Yes, sweetheart, but this adventure is a little more serious than I thought." Rosa packed the USB drive and the spare key back into her tea tin. "I'm coming with you," she announced. "Rosa, you don't have to. Nora was my friend, and that little girl is like my own granddaughter. If someone tried to harm Nora when she was at her weakest, then they'll have to go through me too." 20 minutes later, we emerged from the basement of the adjacent building 2 blocks away. The sedan was still parked outside Rosa's apartment, which meant they were waiting for us to come out the front door. As we walked to my truck, which I'd parked several streets away, my phone buzzed with another message from Dana. "Frank, we know you have something that belongs to the family estate. We need to discuss this immediately." I showed the message to Rosa. "They're not even pretending anymore," she said. "Pretending what?" "That this is about anything other than whatever your wife hid from them." We reached my truck, and as I helped Lila into the back seat, she asked, "Grandpa, why don't Mommy and Daddy want us to have the secret box?" It was a good question. If the contents of Nora's hiding place were just sentimental items or old family documents, why would Mason and Dana care so much? Why would they follow us? Why the urgent messages? "I don't know yet, sweetheart, but we're going to find out." As we drove toward Benji's office, I caught sight of headlights in my rearview mirror, the same dark sedan, keeping pace with us but staying back far enough to avoid being obvious. "We're being followed," I told Rosa. "Good," she said grimly. "Let them follow. They're about to find out that some secrets don't stay buried." Benji Torres's office occupied the ground floor of a converted Victorian house on the old side of town. The sign in the window read, "Torres Notary Services and Document Preparation," and warm light spilled from the windows into the December evening. I parked around back, and we entered through the rear door that Benji had left unlocked for us. The office smelled of old paper and ink, comforting scents that reminded me of the engineering firm where Benji and I had worked together 20 years ago. "Frank?" Benji stood up from behind his desk, extending his hand. He was my age, but had aged better, his dark hair only slightly gray at the temples. "I've been wondering when this day would come." "You knew I'd be coming?" "Your wife made me promise to be ready." He gestured to chairs arranged around his desk. "Please, sit, all of you." Lila settled into a chair with her coloring book, while Rosa and I sat across from Benji. I pulled out the envelope, key, and recipe card that Nora had hidden. Benji's eyes widened when he saw them. "She told me you'd bring these." He walked to a filing cabinet and withdrew a thick folder. 3 years ago, your wife came to me in a panic. She said your son and daughter-in-law were trying to force her to sign documents that would change Lila's custody and inheritance arrangements." "What kind of documents?" "Papers that would have given Mason and Dana complete control over Lila's trust fund and legal guardianship. They claimed it was necessary because of Nora's illness, but the documents went far beyond what would have been reasonable." Benji opened his folder and showed me several papers. "Nora asked me to notarize some counter documents. A new will, custody arrangements, and a power of attorney that specifically excluded Mason and Dana from making decisions about Lila's welfare." I stared at the papers. Nora's signature was there, along with Benji's official notary stamp in blue ink. "Are these legal?" "Absolutely. I witnessed them properly, and they supersede any previous arrangements. But here's the thing, Frank. Nora never filed them with the court. She said she wanted to wait and see if Mason and Dana would back down. They didn't back down, did they?" Benji's expression darkened. 2 weeks before Nora was gone, Mason came here. He demanded to know what documents his mother had signed. When I refused to tell him, he threatened to have my notary license revoked. He said he had connections in the state office. "Did you tell Nora about this?" "Of course. That's when she decided to hide the evidence and create that elaborate system with the music box. She said if anything happened to her, you'd need proof of what they'd tried to do." Rosa leaned forward. "Benji, I have something else." She produced the USB drive from her tea tin. "Nora recorded some of their conversations." Benji plugged the drive into his computer. "There are multiple files on here," he said, scanning the directory. "Let's listen to the most recent one." This recording was different from the one we'd heard at Rosa's apartment. It captured an actual conversation between Nora, Mason, and Dana, apparently recorded during one of their hospital visits. Dana's voice came through clearly. "Mom, you need to understand that Frank is getting older. What if something happens to him? What if he can't take care of Lila properly?" "Frank is fine," Nora's weak voice replied. "He's perfectly capable of caring for our granddaughter." "But legally, we need to be prepared," Mason's voice added. These documents just formalize what we've all agreed on. Dana and I would be better positioned to handle Lila's education, her trust fund, all the legal complexities. I haven't agreed to anything, Nora said, stronger now. And I won't sign papers that cut Frank out of decisions about his own granddaughter. Mom, be reasonable. Dana again, her lawyer voice in full effect. The documents don't cut Frank out. They just ensure that if something happens to him, or if he becomes incapacitated, Lila's interests are protected. You mean if you can prove he's incapacitated? Nora shot back. There was a long pause, then Mason's voice, colder now. Mom, we're trying to do this the easy way, but there are other options. We could petition the court to have Frank declared unfit. We could argue that his age and your passing have affected his mental state. We could present evidence that he's not capable of caring for an 8-year-old. You would do that to your own father? We would do what's necessary to protect our daughter, Dana said. And if you don't sign these papers, we'll have no choice but to pursue other legal remedies. The recording ended in the sound of Nora crying. I sat in stunned silence. My own son had threatened to have me declared mentally unfit so he could gain control of Lila's custody and inheritance. There's more, Benji said quietly. He opened another file. This one captured Mason and Dana talking to each other, apparently unaware that Nora's phone was still recording. She's not going to sign, Dana said. She will, Mason replied. She's fading, Dana. She's weak and scared. We just need to apply more pressure. What if she tells Frank about this? She won't. She doesn't want to burden him while she's in that state. And even if she does, who's going to believe we'd intimidate our own family? The old man's sharper than you think, Mason, and he's got that neighbor woman always around. Rosa, whatever her name is. Rosa Jimenez, Mason said dismissively. She's just a cleaning lady. Nobody's going to take her word over ours. I looked at Rosa, whose face had flushed with anger. Just a cleaning lady, she muttered. There's one more file, Benji said. This one was recorded the day before Nora was gone. In this final recording, Mason's voice was urgent, almost desperate. Mom, the lawyer says we need these documents signed before you're gone. Otherwise, the custody arrangements revert to the original will, and Frank gets equal say in everything. Good, Nora whispered. That's what I want. But what about Lila's future? What about her education, her opportunities? Frank's a good man, but he's old-fashioned. He doesn't understand the modern world. We could give Lila advantages that... You want to give Lila your advantages, Nora interrupted. Your money, your status, your control. But what about giving her love? What about giving her family? We are her family. So is Frank, and you're asking me to choose between you. We're asking you to be practical. I am being practical. I'm protecting my granddaughter from people who see her as a possession to be managed rather than a child to be loved. The recording ended there. She was gone the next day, Benji said softly. I looked over at Lila, who was still coloring peacefully, unaware that we'd just listened to recordings about her future. She'd drawn another picture, this one showing a house with several people around it. One figure was clearly larger than the others, with gray hair. That was me. Another was small with curly hair, herself. But standing apart from them were two figures with angry expressions, pointing at the house. She knows, Rosa said, following my gaze. Children always know more than we think they do. My phone buzzed. Another text from Dana. Frank, we filed a missing persons report. You need to bring Lila home immediately, or we'll have to involve the authorities. I showed the message to Benji, who frowned. They can't file a missing persons report for a child who's with her legal guardian. You have just as much right to Lila as they do under the current custody arrangement. But what about these new documents Nora signed? Do they change anything? They change everything, but only if they're filed with the court. And Frank, Benji hesitated. There's something else. The safety deposit box key your wife left you. I know which bank it's for. She asked me to be a witness when she set it up. What's in the box? I don't know, but she said it contained insurance. Her exact words were, if they try to hurt my family, this will stop them. Another text came through, this time from Mason. Dad, we know you're upset about something, but taking Lila away from us isn't the answer. We can work this out as a family. Work this out as a family, I read aloud. After they threatened to have me declared mentally unfit, stood up, pacing to the window. Frank, there's something else you need to know. The car that was following us, it's parked outside. I joined her at the window. The dark sedan sat across the street, and I could see two figures inside. They're not even trying to hide anymore, I said. Benji was studying the documents in his folder. Frank, I think we need to file these papers with the court immediately. Tonight, if possible. Can we do that? The courthouse has an emergency filing system for urgent family matters. If we can demonstrate that Lila's welfare is at stake, we can get these documents into the system before morning. And then what? Then Mason and Dana will find out that their mother outsmarted them. These documents give you primary custody of Lila and control over her trust fund. They also specifically state that any attempt to have you declared unfit must be reviewed by a panel of 3 independent physicians, not just the court. I felt a surge of pride for my wife. Even at her weakest, she'd been protecting our family. There's just one problem, Benji continued. Filing these documents will start a legal war. Mason and Dana won't give up easily, and they have resources. What kind of resources? Money, connections. Dana's law firm has handled cases against elderly guardians before. They know how to make someone look unfit. From across the room, Lila looked up from her coloring. Grandpa, are the angry people still following us? Yes, sweetheart, but don't worry. We're going to take care of it. Good, she said simply, and went back to her drawing. I realized then that this wasn't just about legal documents or custody arrangements. This was about the kind of person I wanted to be for my granddaughter. Did I want to be someone who backed down when threatened, or someone who fought for what was right? Benji, let's file the papers. Are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back. I looked at Lila's latest drawing. She'd added more details to the house scene, and now I could see that the angry figures weren't just pointing at the house, they were holding papers. Even in her 8-year-old mind, she understood that this conflict was about documents, about legal control. I'm sure. Nora trusted me to protect Lila, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. As Benji began preparing the filing documents, my phone rang. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Ellison, this is Officer Patricia Vero with the county police. We've received a report that you may have taken your granddaughter without permission. Can you tell me where you are? My heart sank. They'd actually called the police. Officer Vero, I'm Lila's grandfather and one of her legal guardians. I have every right to have her with me. I understand, sir, but her parents are concerned. They say you've been acting erratically and they're worried about the child's safety. Acting erratically how? They mentioned that you've been talking about hidden messages and secret documents. They're concerned that you might be experiencing some kind of mental health crisis. I looked at Benji, who was listening to my side of the conversation. He nodded and held out his hand for the phone. Officer Vero, this is Benji Torres, licensed notary and document specialist. Mr. Ellison is here with me reviewing legal documents related to his granddaughter's custody. There's no crisis, mental health or otherwise. He's acting on information left to him by his late wife. There was a pause. Can you verify Mr. Ellison's mental state, Mr. Torres? Absolutely. He's completely lucid and acting in his granddaughter's best interests. In fact, we're preparing to file some important legal documents that will clarify the custody situation. I see. Well, I'll need to file a report, but if Mr. Ellison is with a legal professional and the child is safe, there's no immediate action required. After I hung up, Benji shook his head. They're moving fast. Calling the police, claiming you're having a mental health crisis, they're trying to build a case that you're unfit. How long do we have? Not long. Once those documents are filed with the court, they'll know we have evidence of their threats. They'll escalate quickly after that. Rosa, who had been quiet during the phone call, suddenly spoke up. Then we'd better make sure we're ready for them. She pulled out her own phone and showed me a video file. I've been recording too, Frank. Everything that's happened tonight. Their car following us, the phone calls, all of it. Rosa, you're brilliant. I learned from Nora. She taught me that sometimes the only way to protect the people you love is to document everything. As we prepared to leave for the courthouse, Lila packed up her coloring supplies. Grandpa, are we going to win? Win what, sweetheart? The fight with the angry people. I knelt down beside her. Yes, Lila, we're going to win, because we have something they don't have. What's that? The truth. The county courthouse stood like a fortress against the December night, its stone facade illuminated by security lights. Most of the building was dark, but the emergency filing office on the first floor glowed with fluorescent light, a beacon for those dealing with urgent legal matters that couldn't wait for regular business hours. I can't believe we're doing this at midnight, Rosa muttered as we climbed the courthouse steps. She carried a thermos of coffee and a bag of snacks for Lila, ever the practical caretaker. Emergency custody filings don't follow normal schedules, Benji explained, his briefcase heavy with documents. Family crises happen at all hours. Lila skipped between Rosa and me, apparently viewing this late-night courthouse visit as the ultimate adventure. Her backpack was filled with coloring books and the drawings she'd made throughout the evening, drawings that might serve as evidence of what she'd witnessed. The emergency filing office was staffed by a single clerk, a tired-looking woman in her 50s named Margaret Morell, who'd probably seen every kind of family drama imaginable. "Mr. Torres," she greeted Benji with recognition. "Working late again?" "Emergency custody modification, Margaret. We need to get these documents into the system before morning." She gestured to a small seating area. "I'll need about 30 minutes to process everything. You can wait over there." As Benji worked with the clerk, I sat with Lila and Rosa in the uncomfortable plastic chairs. The building was eerily quiet, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional sound of Margaret's keyboard. "Grandpa, why is this place so empty?" Lila whispered. "Most people don't need to file legal papers in the middle of the night, sweetheart." "But we do?" "Yes, because sometimes you have to act quickly to protect the people you love." My phone had been buzzing constantly with calls and texts from Mason and Dana. I'd stopped reading them after the 10th message, but the frequency was increasing. They knew something was happening. Rosa nudged me. "Frank, look." Through the large windows facing the street, I could see the dark sedan parked across from the courthouse, the same car that had been following us all evening. "They're watching us," I said. "Let them watch," Rosa replied grimly. "They're about to find out that their mother was smarter than they gave her credit for." Benji returned to our seating area with a satisfied expression. "It's done. The documents are officially filed. As of right now, Frank, you have primary custody of Lila, and any attempt to challenge your fitness as a guardian requires a formal hearing with independent medical evaluation." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means Mason and Dana can't just claim you're unfit and take Lila away. They'd have to prove it in court with evidence, and you'd have the right to defend yourself." I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. "So Lila is safe?" "For now. But Frank, they're going to fight this hard. They'll hire expensive lawyers, they'll dig into your life looking for anything they can use against you. Are you prepared for that?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Mason, and this time I decided to take the call. "Dad, what the hell are you doing?" His voice was tight with anger. "We just got a call from some court clerk about custody documents." "What custody documents?" "The ones your mother signed before she was gone, Mason. The ones she hid because she knew you and Dana were trying to corner her into signing away Lila's future." There was a long pause. "Dad, I think you're confused. Mom was very ill toward the end. She wasn't thinking clearly." "She was thinking clearly enough to record your conversations with her. She was thinking clearly enough to document what you were saying." Another pause, longer this time. "I don't know what you think you heard, but I heard you talk about having me labeled mentally unfit, Mason. I heard Dana saying I was too old to care for Lila. I heard both of you pushing a woman at her weakest to sign papers she never wanted to sign. Dad, you're taking things out of context. We were just trying to plan for the future, to make sure Lila would be taken care of. Lila is being taken care of, by me, just like your mother wanted. This is insane. You can't just take our daughter and... She's my granddaughter, Mason. And according to the documents your mother signed and filed tonight, I have primary custody. If you want to change that, you'll have to go through the courts." I hung up before he could respond. "How do you feel?" Rosa asked. "Terrified," I admitted, "but also relieved. For the first time in hours, I feel like we're not running away from something. We're standing and fighting." Lila looked up from her coloring book. "Grandpa, was that Daddy on the phone?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Was he angry?" "Yes, he was angry." "Are you angry too?" I considered the question. Was I angry? Yes, but not in the way I'd expected. I wasn't angry at Mason and Dana for wanting what they believed was best for Lila. I was angry that they'd been willing to hurt a woman at her weakest to get it. I was angry that they'd threatened me, their own family. I was angry that they'd forced me into this position. "Yes, Lila, I'm angry, but not at you, never at you." "Good," she said simply. "Sometimes being angry is okay if someone is being mean to your family." Out of the mouths of babes. Margaret Morell approached us with a stack of papers. "Mr. Ellison, these are your copies of the filed documents. Keep them safe. You'll need them if anyone challenges your custody." "Thank you." "And Mr. Ellison, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen a lot of families tear themselves apart over money and control. What you're doing, protecting your granddaughter based on your wife's wishes, that's what family should be about." As we prepared to leave the courthouse, Benji pulled me aside. "Frank, there's one more thing. The safety deposit box key your wife left you, I think we should check that box tomorrow. If Nora called it insurance, it might contain something important." "More important than what we've already found?" "Your wife was a smart woman. If she went to the trouble of setting up a safety deposit box specifically for this situation, she probably put something in there that could end this fight permanently. We walked out of the courthouse into the cold December night. The sedan was still parked across the street, but now there were 2 cars. Mason and Dana had arrived. As we reached the bottom of the courthouse steps, they got out of their cars and approached us. Mason looked haggard, his usually perfect hair disheveled. Dana was in full lawyer mode, her expression cold and professional. "Dad, we need to talk," Mason said. "We just talked, Mason. I told you how this is going to work." "You're making a mistake," Dana interjected. "Those documents you filed, we can challenge them. We can prove that Nora wasn't competent when she signed them." "Good luck with that," Benji said, stepping forward. "I witnessed those documents personally. Your mother-in-law was completely lucid and understood exactly what she was signing." Dana's eyes narrowed as she studied Benji. "And you are?" "Benji Torres, licensed notary and the person who helped Nora protect her granddaughter from people who wanted to exploit her." "Exploit her?" Mason's voice rose. "She's our daughter. We're trying to protect her." "From what?" I asked. "From having a grandfather who loves her? From having choices about her future? What exactly are you protecting her from, Mason?" "From making the same mistakes we made," Dana said quietly. The honesty of that statement caught me off guard. "What mistakes?" "Trusting that love is enough," she continued, believing that good intentions matter more than practical planning. "Dad, you're 68 years old. What happens to Lila if something happens to you? What happens if you get sick, or if you can't keep up with an active child?" "Then we'll figure it out when that time comes, as a family." "But what if we can't figure it out? What if Lila ends up in foster care or with distant relatives she barely knows? What if her trust fund gets mismanaged or her education gets neglected?" I looked at my daughter-in-law and saw something I hadn't expected: genuine fear. She wasn't just trying to control Lila's future, she was terrified of losing control of it. "Dana, is this really about protecting Lila, or is this about protecting yourself from the possibility that things might not go according to your plan?" She stared at me for a long moment, then looked away. Mason stepped forward. "Dad, regardless of the legal documents, we're still Lila's parents. We still love her, and we still want what's best for her." "Then prove it," I said. "Stop trying to cut me out of her life. Stop treating her like a problem to be managed instead of a child to be loved. Work with me instead of against me." "And if we can't do that?" I looked down at Lila, who was holding Rosa's hand and watching this adult conversation with the intense focus children bring to moments they know are important. "Then we'll let the courts decide what's best for Lila. But Mason, I want you to understand something. I'm not going to back down. Your mother trusted me to protect our granddaughter, and that's exactly what I'm going to do." Dana pulled out her phone. "We'll be filing our own motions in the morning, challenging the validity of those documents, requesting psychological evaluation, demanding full custody pending investigation." "Do what you feel you need to do," I replied. "But understand that every move you make against me is a move you're making against your own daughter's grandfather. Every legal challenge is going to require Lila to be questioned, evaluated, possibly removed from her home while the courts sort things out. Is that really what you want for her?" For the first time since this confrontation began, Mason looked uncertain. "Dad, we don't want to hurt Lila." "Then don't." We stood there in the cold December air, 3 generations of family facing off over the future of one 8-year-old girl. The courthouse loomed behind us, a symbol of the legal battle that was about to consume all our lives. Finally, Dana spoke. "We'll see you in court, Frank." They turned and walked back to their cars, leaving us standing on the courthouse steps. "Well," Rosa said, "that went better than I expected." "Better?" I asked. "They didn't call the police, and nobody got arrested. In my book, that's a successful family meeting." Despite everything, I found myself smiling. "Rosa, what would I do without you?" "You'll never have to find out, Miko. Now let's get this little girl somewhere warm and safe. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." As we walked to my truck, Lila tugged at my coat. "Grandpa, are Mommy and Daddy going to be okay?" "I hope so, sweetheart. Sometimes families have to work through difficult problems, but that doesn't mean they stop loving each other." "Do they still love me?" I stopped walking and knelt down so I could look her in the eye. "Lila, your parents love you more than anything in the world. They're just scared right now, and scared people sometimes make bad decisions. But their love for you, that's never going to change." "And you love me too?" "More than all the stars in the sky." "Good," she said, hugging me tightly. "Because I love you too, and I don't want the angry people to take me away from you." "They won't, sweetheart. I promise." As we drove away from the courthouse, I caught sight of Mason and Dana still standing by their cars, talking intensely. In the morning, they'd probably call their lawyers and begin the process of challenging everything we'd filed tonight. But for now, Lila was safe. The legal documents were filed, and we had evidence of Mason and Dana's threats against Nora. Whatever happened next, we were no longer running away from the truth. We were armed with it. Morning light filtered through the curtains of Rose's guest bedroom, but I'd been awake for hours. Lila slept peacefully beside me, her small hand clutching the edge of my shirt even in sleep. My phone buzzed. A text from Benji. First National opens at 9. I'll meet you there. Rosa was already in the kitchen when I emerged, the smell of coffee filling the small apartment. She looked as tired as I felt. You didn't sleep either, I observed. How could I? Mason called 6 times. Dana left voicemails threatening legal action against me. Lila wandered out in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Are we still having an adventure, Grandpa? The biggest part is today, sweetheart. We're going to see what Grandma left us in her special box. Benji was waiting on the bank steps with 2 other people, a young woman with a camera and an older man in a suit. Frank, this is Ayla Morell, notary and videographer, and Robert Hayes, a retired judge. They'll witness whatever we find. Witness? Chain of custody. If Mason and Dana challenge what's in the box, we need proof we didn't tamper with anything. The bank manager led us to the vault. Box 247 was in the middle row. My hands shook as I inserted the key. For the record, Ayla said, adjusting her camera. December 26th, 9:04 a.m. The box hasn't been opened since Nora Ellison sealed it 3 years ago. Inside was a thick manila envelope, a small leather journal, and a DVD labeled For the Court. Benji carefully removed each item while Ayla filmed. Mr. Ellison, please open the envelope. Inside were legal documents, canceled checks, bank statements, and email printouts. What is this? I muttered. Benji's eyes widened. Frank, these are financial records. Transfers from Lila's trust fund to Mason and Dana's personal accounts. What? Started 2 months after Nora's diagnosis. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. 10,000, 20,000. Robert Hayes leaned in. This shows unauthorized withdrawals from a minor's trust fund. This is embezzlement, Rosa gasped. They were stealing from Lila? According to Nora's notes, Mason claimed the withdrawals were for Lila's benefit, tutoring, enrichment programs. But look at these receipts Nora collected. The tutoring service doesn't exist. The addresses are P.O. boxes. These aren't real expenses. I felt sick. They were using Lila's money for themselves, and when Nora confronted them, that's when they started pressuring her to sign over complete control. No oversight, no accountability. The leather journal contained Nora's daily notes. Her handwriting grew shakier as the pages progressed. March 15th. Mason asked about Lila's college fund again. But I checked. It's already properly invested. What does he really want? April 10th. Dana presented papers to streamline management, but the fine print removes all restrictions on withdrawals. May warrant. They took $25,000 last month. When I asked for receipts, Mason said I was confused. But Rosa helped me check the records. The money is gone. I had to stop reading. Tears blurred my vision. We need to watch the DVD, Benji said gently. In a private conference room, we played the disc. The screen showed Nora in her hospital bed, frail but clear-eyed, 2 days before she passed. Frank, if you're watching this, you found everything. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you while I was alive. Mason and Dana have taken over $180,000 from Lila's trust fund. When I confronted them, they said they were investing it in opportunities, but I hired a private investigator. His report is in the envelope. They used the money to cover Mason's business debts. His company is failing, Frank. Has been for 2 years. The papers they wanted me to sign would have made their withdrawals retroactively legal. It would have erased all evidence. And if I didn't sign, they'd prove you mentally unfit and take Lila anyway. I documented everything. Use this evidence. Fight for her. Tell her grandma loved her and everything I did was to keep her safe. The screen went black. Nobody spoke. Lila had fallen asleep in Rosa's lap. This changes everything, Robert Hayes said. Mason and Dana could face criminal charges. Will it be enough for the custody hearing? This doesn't just protect your custody. It could terminate theirs entirely. My phone rang. Jory Walsh, Mason and Dana's attorney. Mr. Ellison, we're filing an emergency motion this morning to have Lila placed in temporary state custody pending investigation of your fitness. We have witnesses who will testify you've been acting erratically, possibly suffering from dementia. The hearing is at 2 o'clock this afternoon. She hung up. 2:00, I told Benji. They moved it up. Because they don't know what we found, Benji said. They're trying to strike before we can prepare. Robert Hayes stood. Mr. Ellison, I'd like to represent you this afternoon, pro bono. Why? Because your wife spent her final days building a case to protect her granddaughter. The least I can do is help you finish what she started. We spent the next 3 hours organizing evidence. Ayla made multiple copies, each set notarized. Benji created a timeline cross-referencing the financial records with the audio recordings and Nora's journal. At 1:00, Mason texted, Dad, please, let's not do this in court. We can work something out. Classic last-minute tactic, Robert said. They know they're in trouble. At 1:30, we arrived at the courthouse. News vans filled the parking lot. Mason and Dana called the media, Robert said, trying to control the narrative, but that strategy is about to backfire. Reporters rushed us with cameras and microphones. Mr. Ellison, why did you take your granddaughter? Is it true you're suffering from dementia? Robert held up his hand. No comment at this time. The facts will speak for themselves. Inside, Mason and Dana sat with Jory Walsh, looking confident. But when Mason saw Robert Hayes, his expression faltered. Dana whispered urgently to their lawyer, who pulled out her phone. They're trying to figure out who I am, Robert said with a small smile. Let them sweat. Judge Brooks entered at 2:00. We're here for an emergency hearing in Ellison versus Ellison. I'm clearing the courtroom of everyone except the parties and their legal representatives. The reporters protested but were ushered out. Miss Walsh, you filed the emergency motion. Proceed. But Robert Hayes stood instead. Your Honor, I'm Robert Hayes, representing Franklin Ellison. I have evidence that directly contradicts every allegation in the petitioner's motion. Judge Brooks studied him. Judge Hayes? I thought you retired. I did, but this case brought me back. What I'm about to present will fundamentally change these proceedings. I'd like to enter evidence prepared by the deceased, Nora Ellison, specifically for use in a custody dispute. Jory Walsh jumped up. Objection. We haven't been provided discovery. Because it was sealed in a safety deposit box opened this morning. Everything was done with witnesses and documented by video. The chain of custody is impeccable. Judge Brooks leaned forward. What kind of evidence? Financial records showing embezzlement from the Miners' Trust Fund. Audio recordings of threats made against Mr. Ellison, video testimony from the deceased, and a private investigator's report documenting where the stolen money went. The courtroom went silent. Mason's face went white. Dana whispered urgently to Jory Walsh, who looked stunned. Judge Brooks set down her pen. I think we need to see this evidence. All of it. Robert Hayes opened his briefcase and pulled out a USB drive. Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to begin with video testimony recorded by the deceased Nora Ellison, 2 days before her passing. Judge Brooks nodded. Proceed. Ayla Morell set up her laptop, connecting it to the courtroom's display screen. The bailiff dimmed the lights slightly, and the large monitor flickered to life. Nora appeared on screen, propped up in her hospital bed. Her face was gaunt, her skin pale, but her eyes were sharp and focused. The date stamp in the corner read 2 days before her passing. My name is Nora Caldwell Ellison, she began, her voice weak but steady. I'm making this recording because I need to tell the truth about what my son Mason and his wife Dana have been doing. I watched Mason's face go white. Dana gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles turning pale. Over the past year, Mason and Dana have systematically stolen money from my granddaughter Lila's trust fund. They've taken over $180,000, claiming it was for her education and enrichment. But I hired a private investigator, and he discovered the truth. They used the money to cover Mason's failing business debts. Jory Walsh whispered urgently to her clients, but Judge Brooks held up her hand. Quiet in the courtroom. On screen, Nora continued, When I confronted them, they didn't deny it. Instead, they brought me legal documents, papers that would give them complete control over Lila's trust and custody. They said if I didn't sign, they would have my husband Frank declared mentally unfit. They would take Lila away from the only family she has left who truly loves her. Tears streamed down my face. Rosa reached over and squeezed my hand. I refused to sign, so they threatened me. They said they would make Frank look incompetent, that they would use his age against him, that they would make sure he never saw his granddaughter again. My own son had intimidated his mother at her weakest and his own father to conceal taking from a child. Nora paused, catching her breath. I'm leaving this evidence for Frank because I know they won't stop. I know they'll try again after I'm gone. But I also know my husband. He's the strongest, most loving man I've ever known, and he'll fight for Lila when the time comes. She looked directly into the camera, and it felt like she was looking at me. Frank, If you're watching this in court, it means you found everything. It means you didn't give up. I'm so proud of you. Protect our granddaughter. She deserves better than people who see her as a source of money." The screen went black. The courtroom was silent. Even the bailiff looked shaken. Judge Brooks cleared her throat. "Mr. Hayes, you mentioned financial records?" "Yes, Your Honor." Robert spread documents across a table the bailiff had set up. "These are bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals from Lila's trust fund, beginning 2 months after Mrs. Ellison's cancer diagnosis." He pointed to highlighted entries. March 15th, $5,000. April 2nd, $8,000. By May, the amounts increased to $25,000 per month. The stated purpose on each withdrawal was educational expenses or enrichment programs. "And you have evidence these were fraudulent?" Judge Brooks asked. Robert handed her a folder. "Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Ellison collected receipts and made inquiries. The tutoring service Mason listed doesn't exist. The address is a post office box. The enrichment program is equally fictitious. Not a single dollar went to Lila's actual benefit." Jory Walsh stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to review these documents before—" "Sit down, Ms. Walsh." Judge Brooks's voice was ice. "Your clients have had 3 years to be honest about this. They chose deception instead." She turned to Mason and Dana. "Mr. and Mrs. Ellison, stand up." They rose shakily. "Did you take money from your daughter's trust fund?" Mason opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "Answer the question, Mr. Ellison." We borrowed it," Mason finally said, "for business expenses. We were going to pay it back." "Borrowed?" Judge Brooks's eyebrows rose. "Did you have authorization to borrow from a minor's trust fund?" "We're her parents." "That's not what I asked. Did you have legal authorization?" Dana spoke up, her lawyer voice finally failing her. "No, Your Honor. But we intended to replace—" "You intended to cover it up," Judge Brooks interrupted. "That's why you pressured a woman at her weakest to sign documents that would have made what you took appear lawful after the fact. That's why you tried to have Mr. Franklin Ellison declared unfit, because you knew he would discover what you'd done." She looked down at the documents Robert had provided. "According to the private investigator's report, you used this money to pay creditors for your failing real estate company. You used your daughter's college fund to save your business. Do you deny this?" Mason's shoulders slumped. "No, Your Honor." "Oh, and when your mother discovered this, you threatened her and your father rather than admit what you'd done?" Neither of them answered. Judge Brooks turned to Robert. "You mentioned audio recordings as well?" "Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Ellison recorded several conversations with the petitioners." Robert played the recordings we'd already heard. Mason and Dana pressuring Nora, threatening me, dismissing Rosa as just a cleaning lady. When they finished, Dana was crying openly. Mason stared at the floor. "Your Honor," Jory Walsh tried one more time. "My clients made mistakes, but they love their daughter." "Their daughter whose future they stole." Judge Brooks's voice was sharp. "Their daughter they were willing to traumatize by having her grandfather declared mentally incompetent? That daughter?" She turned to me. "Mr. Ellison, I want to be clear about something. The evidence presented today shows not only that you are a fit and caring guardian, but that your son and daughter-in-law have demonstrated a pattern of financial misconduct, emotional pressure, and a disregard for both their daughter's well-being and their mother's wishes during her final days." Relief washed over me, but Judge Brooks wasn't finished. "However, I also note that you acted quickly and decisively to protect your granddaughter. You followed the legal procedures your wife had put in place. You sought counsel. You documented everything. This is exactly what a responsible guardian should do." She looked at Mason and Dana. "As for you two, I'm amending my earlier ruling. You will not have supervised visitation. You will have no visitation rights at all, pending a full criminal investigation into the embezzlement charges." "Your Honor, please," Mason started. "I'm not finished." Judge Brooks' expression was stern. "I'm also ordering that you repay every cent you took from that trust fund with interest within 90 days. Failure to do so will result in criminal charges. Additionally, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for possible prosecution for theft, fraud, and elder abuse." Dana collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Mason looked like he might be ill. "Furthermore," Judge Brooks continued, "I'm ordering a complete audit of Lila's trust fund to ensure no other funds are missing. The results will be provided to Mr. Franklin Ellison, who is hereby granted sole authority over the trust until Lila reaches 18 years of age." She looked at Lila, who was watching from Rosa's lap with wide eyes. "Lila, sweetheart, do you understand what's happening?" Lila nodded solemnly. "The judge is saying I get to stay with Grandpa." "That's right. And your grandpa is going to make sure you're taken care of. Is that okay with you?" "Yes, ma'am, that's what I want." Judge Brooks smiled gently at her, then her expression hardened as she turned back to Mason and Dana. Let me be absolutely clear. If you attempt to contact your daughter, if you attempt to see her, if you so much as drive past Mr. Ellison's house, I will hold you in contempt and you will go to jail. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor," they said in unison. "Good. This court is adjourned." The gavel came down with a sound that echoed through the silent courtroom. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Lila jumped down from Rosa's lap and ran to me, throwing her arms around my waist. "We won, Grandpa, just like Grandma said." I held her tight, unable to speak. Rosa joined us, wrapping her arms around both of us. Benji stood nearby, smiling with tears in his eyes. Across the courtroom, Mason and Dana sat frozen at their table. Jory Walsh was packing her briefcase with sharp, angry movements, clearly furious at her clients for not being honest with her. Mason finally looked up and met my eyes. For a moment, I saw my son, not the man who'd taken from his daughter and intimidated his mother at her weakest, but the little boy I'd raised, the one who helped me build birdhouses in the garage and asked 1,000 questions about how everything worked. "Dad," he said quietly, "I'm sorry." I wanted to say something, to find words that would bridge the chasm that had opened between us. But what could I say? He'd betrayed everything our family stood for. He'd hurt his mother in her final days. He'd tried to take Lila away from me. "I hope you are," I finally replied. "For your sake and Dana's. But mostly for Lila's sake, because she deserves parents who are better than what you've shown her." He nodded, tears streaming down his face, and turned away. As we left the courtroom, reporters swarmed us in the hallway. Robert held up his hand. "Mr. Ellison has no comment at this time. The court's ruling speaks for itself. The evidence presented today showed a clear pattern of financial abuse and manipulation. Justice has been served." We pushed through the crowd to the parking lot. The December air was cold and clean, and I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in days. "Grandpa," Lila said as I buckled her into the truck, "does this mean we can go home now?" "Yes, sweetheart, we can go home." "And finish decorating the Christmas tree?" I laughed, the first real laugh I'd had since finding Nora's music box. "Yes, we can finish the tree." "Good, because Grandma would want us to make it beautiful." As I drove away from the courthouse, I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time. Mason and Dana were standing by their car, holding each other, looking lost and broken. Part of me, the part that remembered raising Mason, that remembered the good times before greed and fear had corrupted him, felt sorry for them. But the larger part of me, the part that loved Lila and honored Nora's memory, knew that this was how it had to be. Sometimes protecting the people you love means fighting against the people you love. Nora had understood that. She'd known that Mason and Dana would come for Lila, and she'd spent her final days building a fortress of evidence to protect our granddaughter. "Thank you," I whispered, looking up at the sky. "Thank you for always protecting what matters most." Rosa, sitting in the passenger seat, smiled. "She's probably watching right now, proud as anything." "I hope so." When we got home, the bare Christmas tree was still standing in the living room, surrounded by unopened boxes of ornaments. Lila clapped her hands. "Can we decorate it now, please?" "Of course we can." We spent the rest of the afternoon transforming the bare tree into something beautiful. Lila hung ornaments while Rosa and I strung lights. When we finally placed the angel on top, the one that had been Nora's favorite, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. "Perfect," Lila declared, stepping back to admire our work. "Grandma would love it." "She would," I agreed. "She really would." That night, after Lila had gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room, looking at the twinkling lights on the tree. The music box sat on the coffee table, and on impulse, I wound it up. "The way you look tonight" filled the room, and I closed my eyes, remembering Nora. Remembering our wedding day, our life together, the way she'd always known what needed to be done. "We did it," I said to the empty room. "Lila's safe, just like you wanted." The music played on, and somewhere in the melody I could almost hear Nora's voice. "I knew you would, Frank. I always knew.